Everybody, this is Heath Mullikin. We want to welcome you to this very special first time press conference where we're coming together as wrestling fans here in South Carolina and North Carolina and getting a live announcement of the winners of the Carolinas Professional Wrestling Awards. So it is great to be with you. We got a couple other people joining us. We may have some other people jumping in. Let's go first to someone who has a great show, but also was a panelist this year, Mr. Joseph Brown.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Joe is with Suplexes and Microphones. You can find them Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, some really cool interviews. And they've got, spoiler alert, they got a big 2019 plan. And so basically what we're going to do is I'm going to turn it over here in just a second to Robert Truesdale, otherwise known as Redbeard. Robert's going to go through the winners of each award. And then once he's done, we're just going to kind of talk about it, just have a civil discussion about the process. And Joe, love to get your thoughts as a panelist this year, and then maybe close out with some predictions for 2019. So again, we thank, wherever you're watching this, we're making this available to different podcasts and Facebook pages. So wherever you're watching this, we just appreciate your support of Carolina's independent wrestling. So without further ado, the man who is just does so much hard work behind the CPWAs and puts up with so much stuff, Robert Truesdale. Robert, the floor is yours, and thanks for doing this, man.
Well, Heath, I want to say thank you to you, especially for hosting this event and for putting this whole thing together for us here. We talked about the different ways we could have potentially made the announcements regarding the winners this year, and I had several different individuals come to me asking for sort of an exclusive about the winners, and in my mind, I was thinking for a way, well, how can we make this fair? And press conference seemed to be the most obvious choice, but I had no way of actually making this happen. So when I brought it up to you, you were the first, of course, to chime in with exactly how we could do this. So I appreciate your time and your effort in hosting this whole thing for us.
Absolutely.
So we'll jump into things here with the first category we want to discuss, which is going to be Ring Announcer of the Year. This category had a couple of new faces involved with it, as we've had a couple of new entrants into the ring announcer fray. It's a category, I'll say, that we have honestly, toyed with. Do we want to keep this around or not? Because it seems like we have pretty limited stock in terms of real high quality ring announcers. But this year we had a pretty expansive set of finalists. But in the end, there was one who shined through, and that one was none other than Brett Wolverton. There you have it. 2018 Ring Announcer of the Year, Brett Wolverton. Congratulations to him for, I don't know how many in a row this might be, but it might be a baker's dozen at this point in time.
Right.
No, I take that back because Corky Franks won a couple of years ago. So, but congratulations to Brett for sure. And then moving on from there, our next category was Referee of the Year. We've got somebody popping in here joining the press conference, so we'll give them a moment to materialize.
It looks like my podcast partner Nate's jumping on here.
I believe so.
Nate, welcome to the proceedings, sir.
We'll give him a moment to get settled there, but the next category we'll talk about is Referee of the Year. I think referees are always that individual that gets, I won't say discredited, but they don't get the amount of credit they deserve for what they actually are involved with when it comes to a wrestling match being successful. So these individuals are unheralded heroes a lot of times. But our finalists for this year were Chris Wiggins, Ray Boring, and Jared Fritz. And out of that crew, of course, we're going to have a first-time winner, and that winner this year was Jared Fritz. There you have it. Jared has done a remarkable job of training and becoming a real sought-after individual when it comes to being one of the top officials in this part of the world. So definitely want to give him a lot of credit for the amount of work he's done in getting to where he is with his career. All right. Moving here. We had a couple of new entrants into this one as well. Manager of the Year is always kind of a hot button topic because some people say, okay, well, there aren't really enough managers to go around. But then some folks say, well, there's some people who deserve credit and recognition that didn't get it. And this year, I think we really hit the nail on the head in terms of bringing a lot of exposure to the managers that are out there. And we had a good roster represented by the following people. George South, Amber Young, Jack Bismarck, Papa Riley, otherwise known as Zane Riley, and Tommy Thomas. And before I get to the winner, I will say that we had a couple of, we debuted fan voting this year in terms of the fans' choice polls. For the most part, the winners of the fans' choice polls were also ultimately the winners of the actual awards. This one did not go that way. The winner of this award this year for Manager of the Year 2018 is Tommy Thomas. That's a wonderful picture there, Tommy. I'm sure he would agree that that's reflective of his personality and what he does as part of the management duties of the syndicate and other groups around the country there as well. So congratulations to him. This is, I believe, his third CPWA for Manager of the Year. All right, and going from there, another hot button category that we have this year is, of course, Feud of the Year, because there was a lot of discussion about not only the feuds themselves, but also the people involved in them. So for this category, our finalists were Caleb Conley versus Zane Dawson from AML Wrestling. We had Kevin Ray versus Ethan Case from Palmetto Championship Wrestling. Josh Powers versus Beasley from PWX Pure. And also Malachi Matthews versus Ethan Case, also from Palmetto Championship Wrestling. I think that any of those, in my opinion, would have been a great feud to revisit at any point in time and rewatch again, which I'm going to throw a plug in there for the SOS Custom Wrestling Network. A lot of the stuff from several of these you can find out there, shared either with them or via that network. But at the same time, I will go ahead and say that our winner, or Feud of the Year 2018, Malachi Matthews versus Ethan Case from Palmetto Championship Wrestling. There you have it. Those two gentlemen there had just a series of encounters that really spanned not only the Carolinas as a whole, but also really focused into Palmetto Championship Wrestling with the ultimate payoff there of their match that they had here about a month or so ago. That was really brutal, very intense matchup, something that you'll, of course, also be able to see on the SOS Custom Wrestling Network here at some point in time, if not already. All right, and now we're starting to get into some new territory. This was a brand new award, and I'm talking about the Fire of the Carolinas Award. We debuted this award this year as a result of something that happened last year with the Rising Star category. The situation last year was such that we had just a huge number of finalists in Rising Star. So we wanted to have a way of whittling that down to where it was some sort of greenhorns that were up and coming talent, but also we wanted to have an opportunity to show appreciation to someone who had a great year, might not have reached Wrestler of the Year category status, but still had a fantastic set of performances regardless. So in this category this year, we had a great crew. This was, to me, this is kind of an MVP list here as well in terms of talent from this area. But in this category, our finalists were Drew Adler, Josh Powers, Slim J, Billy Brash, and Darius Lockhart. And for the first ever award of the Fire of the Carolinas, the winner is Darius Lockhart, the revolutionary Darius Lockhart, I should say. And definite kudos to that young man for a lot of the things he's accomplished in 2018. Not only did he return to the United Kingdom for another tour over there, held the PWX ITV Championship for a majority of the year, and also just recently here, of course, I think you guys were in attendance there a week or so ago when he won the Viral Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Championship as well. So definite kudos to Darius for continuing to climb that ladder. And I mentioned a moment ago that we had a couple of categories where the fans' vote did not necessarily wind up winning. But this is, I think, evidence of, again, how much talent we have in this area and just how opinions sort of vary depending on who's weighing in at that point in time. But for the Rising Star of the Year category, we had another great crew of up-and-coming talent. I think these guys are going to be that next crop that we start talking about here, either in Fire of the Carolinas or Wrestler of the Year in the next, say, year or two. But our finalists for Rising Star were the gifted one, Yaya, Movie Mike, Kevin Ray, and Devin Cruz. Again, great combination of talent there, but the one that came out on top with the final vote was none other than Yaya. And I've had an opportunity to see this man continue to develop as part of the NAWA roster and several other different promotions across the Carolinas. He's doing great things. He has a combination of that sort of junkyard dog, Willie Mack sort of mentality and tremendous physicality and what he's able to do in the ring. So definitely, if you've not already, take time out to catch this man when he's appearing in a promotion near you. And I think we can always count on some controversy when it comes to the Tag Team of the Year category. This year was exactly along those lines. We had some folks who felt as though we should have included a few more tag teams in this mix, but I will say that this is probably the top three in the area, in my opinion, for having focused on the Carolinas in 2018. Not to say that we don't have a ton of great tag teams. This is just sort of the centralized crew here. The finalists for Tag Team of the Year were the Sons of Steel, the Monster Squad, and the Dawson Brothers. Dawson Brothers, of course, were the winners in 2017. They did not repeat, however, in 2018 because the winners of the Tag Team of the Year category for 2018 are the Monster Squad. I hate to hear of the fact that Josh Cutchall was injured here over the past week or so, suffered a broken collarbone as a result of competition at Best Wrestling in Florida. They have some really crazy shows down there, but I do know that Josh is already on the mend. He's looking forward to getting back in the ring and continuing domination that they have really sort of set on fire here in the past couple of months. They really have caught a lot of people's attention, and I know that they'll be back together as a tag team here soon. Billy and he have tremendous charisma and just a great combination of personalities there that really work off of each other. So definitely looking forward to seeing them back together as a tag team in the ring soon. And now we're down to our top two categories, female and male wrestler of the year. In terms of female wrestling around this area, I try to encourage promoters whenever I have a chance to talk to them to say, you need to try and have some more female wrestlers involved because there really are a lot of talents in this area that are available and that will be involved with a promotion just if they're given the opportunity. So I do hope to continue to try and get that sort of put over in the coming year to where we can continue to grow women's professional wrestling in this area. There are a couple of promotions that do it very well, but there are a lot of promotions that can do it better, in my opinion, too. But the finalists for Female Wrestler of the Year were Maddie Max, Savannah Evans, Roni Nicole, and Faye Jackson. And we have a two-time winner in this category, as Savannah Evans is your 2018 Female Wrestler of the Year. And definite kudos to Savannah. She has captured several championships in multiple promotions, not the least of which is Old School Championship Wrestling's Ladies Championship. She's defended that against several top competitors to come into that promotion, and are looking forward to seeing what she can do there and elsewhere in 2019. All right, and we're down now to the final category, Wrestler of the Year. I'll tell you, this, to me, in 2018 was sort of an impossible category to really buckle down on and say, okay, this is the guy. Until it kind of got towards the third quarter of the year, and it started to really shine, in my opinion, as to who it was going to be. There's some great names and some great people involved in this category. We probably could have named a few more, but the top three in terms of the finalists for the rest of the year category were J.D. Drake, of course, who's the current WWN heavyweight champion, Darius Lockhart, who has already been mentioned here previously, and Billy Brash, who's, of course, holding multiple titles as well at this point in the Carolinas. The man who came out on top, the Wrestler of the Year for 2018 in the Carolinas, none other than Built to Self-Destruct, Billy Brash. There you have it, the Wrestler of the Year for the Carolinas Professional Wrestling Awards. Billy Brash there holding the AML Prestige title, which is something he's held for a majority of 2018. And we want to wish him continued success throughout 2019, as he has just had a meteoric rise to where he is at this point in time in his career. And that is our roster of winners there for 2018. At this point, Heath, I will turn it back over to you for whatever is to come next year.
Yeah. So, Robert, thank you for all of that. Like I said, just really want to have more of a discussion. So, I guess let me start out, and Joe and Nate, if you guys want to jump in any time. Let's just kind of have like a round table discussion. Looking back, Robert, over the year, I know you get the nominations and you're formulating everything. What was a name? Who was a name that you thought for sure at the start of the year, well, this person's definitely going to be a finalist for something, that didn't become a finalist but still had a great year? Anybody?
I'll tell you, there are actually three names that I could bring up sort of immediately. One of them dawned on me as we were having some meetings and discussion here about the finalists and whatnot, and that's Tracer X. I think Tracer had a tremendous 2018. I think there were a couple of different categories that he could have qualified for, but I can't say why, but he just wasn't there. Another one, of course, Anthony Henry. Anthony has had a great 2018, but I think he's another one of those guys who has, and it's unfortunate, but it's also great. It's very weird to say, because you have bad, good, and it's all right here in the middle, to where he's kind of outgrown the Carolinas, and he's branched off and done great things in a lot of different places. So kudos to him and all these guys who get out and get over, as the saying is going these days. I think he's another one that could have been in that mix there as well. And I'd say also a John Schuyler, because he's always got to be in the conversation, in my opinion. Until he, I don't know why, but until he finally gets that opportunity at a bigger contract somewhere, he's always, to me, going to be in that top group of talent that we have in this area.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of a catch-22, because when I think of Tracer, and I'm thinking back to how many promotions in the Carolinas he worked for. I mean, if you dig down deep, like, he may have worked more promotions than anybody. I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but which is a great thing, but then it also may be a bad thing, because if you're just kind of hitting spots here and there at places, you don't really get a chance to kind of move into the main event picture. But I mean, he's had great matches everywhere. And yeah, I was really surprised, just like you. Any of the winners? Were there any of the winners that you thought, oh my goodness, that's kind of an upset, or did it kind of track with where you were at personally?
One of the bigger ones to me was Tag Team of the Year. I didn't know really how it was going to go, especially after our finalists got named there. Some people were really looking forward to seeing like the Gymnasties or Dudley Ducklings in that category. But here again, they've outgrown sort of the Carolinas. Not to say that they didn't have great matches here in 2018, but once again, they spent a lot of time developing their brands and doing a lot of great things outside of our territory as well. But the Monster Squad, I think, surprised some people to be in that area and to call it on like they did. But they caught fire at the right time of year. We talk about awards season a lot of times in regard to these things, and it is sort of timing. And in their case, they had some great things happening towards the end of the year that really put them at the forefront. So I think that was something that probably caught a lot of people by surprise, more than likely. That's the biggest one, I would say. The rest of them were pretty close. I think Rising Star could have gone a couple different ways there as well. But again, Yaya had a great second half of the year. The ladder match, or excuse me, it was the ladder match at AML Wrestling's event there with Impact Wrestling, where they were all fighting for the Prestige Championship. That was a crazy match that sort of put him on the map. But still, he has done some great things, and I'm sure he'll continue to do that in 2019.
Hey, Joe, let me ask you a question real quick. I was able to be, Mark Whitman and I were able to be panelists last year, kind of in the same situation as you and Nate. There were times, we wanted to split our vote. But what was the experience like for you? Like once you were asked, you and Nate, once you were asked to be panelist, like did you find yourself watching more wrestling and getting more into it, or what was the experience like?
Nate, you want to go first on this?
Sure. I watched a few more tapes. Most of the candidates I was already pretty familiar with, and Joe and I just I don't know if it's familiarity or just being of a like mind. We tend to agree with each other pretty often anyway. So as far as combining a vote together, that was pretty easy for us.
Yeah, we only had one or two that we compromised on, right, Nate?
Yeah, I think so. Everything else was pretty much all in agreement.
Yeah, I'm like Robert. I was so I'd love to get y'all's thoughts on this. I definitely feel like the Monster Squad had a really good year, very deserving. They had a tremendous run in Palmetto Championship Wrestling. Just a real hot streak. The different teams that they beat, but they weren't on my radar at the beginning of the year for Tag Team of the Year. I guess I had Gymnasties, the Ducks, and I'm sure those guys got nominated. But I think it goes to say, like, the Monster Squad, they're kind of like the new guys on the scene, and they connected with the audience this year in a way that maybe some of these other teams didn't this year. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like first of all, I want to say that Joe and I kind of saw this team birthed out of Viral Wrestling out in Thompson, Georgia. And so they kind of hold a special place in my heart, especially. So it was nice to see them finally getting used in other promotions as a team. Each of them had wrestled singles in a lot of different promotions, and now seeing them used as a tag team, like I said, PCW specifically, PWX now. I think they're in Fest last weekend together. So it's been nice seeing them getting more time together as a team. As far as Gymnasties and the Ugly Ducklings go, I mean, I know the Ducklings, they won it last year. Is that correct?
No, they won it in 2016.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know they won it before, and then, like you said, it's kind of the thing with Anthony Henry where you said where they might have kind of outgrown just being, Carolina's team. Gymnasties are well known for using the hashtag not local, these days. So So, I mean, it could be the point where they've just kind of outgrown the two-state region, and that's just kind of why I didn't consider them personally for the title tag team of the year. Just kind of want to give somebody else a chance, and it just like I said, I think the Monster Squad made great strides this year.
Yeah, they're really, really fun to watch. I think Savannah Evans, I think we've all talked about her privately and in public. I do think there is, outside of Queens of Combat, there's this really big hole. I think Queens of Combat ran maybe 8 shows in the Carolinas this year. I may be wrong, but again, they're not really a promotion that I'm super familiar with. I think moving forward, people on the panel probably need to pay, and I wish that's something I would have done last year, was pay more attention, because they're not just kind of the go-to women's wrestling in the Carolinas, but probably the country. But Savannah Evans, man, she deserves, any accolades she's get. Such a great young woman, and just to kind of see her continue to improve and finally get that OSCW women's title, man, that was a pretty cool moment that I think Robert and I were both down there for that, right?
We were. That was a tremendous moment there to see her get that victory, because she had multiple matches with Stormy Lee down there, and Stormy, she was one that could have been brought up in that category as well, for the fact that she held that title. She was the first OSCW ladies champion as well. But Savannah, she's had matches with multiple talents that could be performers on any card anywhere, in terms of not just women's wrestlers either. We're talking about the fact that she's wrestled numerous men this year too. Had a match up there with James Drake. I mean, come on. A lot of men would be terrified to get in the ring with him, and yet here she is in there trading blows,
Right.
Can't say enough for Savannah. She's a great representative of women's wrestling in this area.
Guys, you guys have any thoughts on Savannah?
It's kind of a no-brainer.
Right. I'll be honest. In the women's category, there was one of them that I had not heard of, and again, I do not follow. I don't follow women's wrestling, and so if they didn't wrestle outside of Queens of Combat, I really was not familiar with them. Let's talk about Robert. You mentioned Fire of the Carolinas, a new award this year, and when I heard about this award and kind of saw where the year was going, this is the one I said, that's Darius Lockhart's award to lose. And so I was very happy to see him win. I do think there may be some people on this call who are a little bit biased about that. But I'm telling you, Suplexes.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Listen, these guys were on the Darius train early. Guys, there had to be some sense of satisfaction to be, and I'm just assuming you voted for him, but there had to be some sense of satisfaction to just see what this young man did in 2018.
I'm not going to tell you who we voted for, but he was definitely nominated by us for this category.
As I did too. I nominated him too.
You described it really well, though, Heath, talking about what you saw as the right check boxes for Fire of the Carolinas. Darius hits them all, and I really think this award this year was made for him.
Right. So Robert, let me ask you this, because I know in your interview with Carolina Uncensored in different places, you talked about maybe refining some of the definitions for this award. But for it being in the first year, how do you think everything turned out with it?
I think it came out very well. The one concern I did have was that it would wind up overlapping with Wrestler of the Year, which was never the intention. It was intended to be, and I've used a couple of terms to describe this award, which I won't now because of people like Joseph and whatnot who've said, no, don't call it that.
Right.
But it's intended to really have an up and coming type of feel to it, to where it says, okay, this guy might not have been Wrestler of the Year, but in 2019 or whatever, he's one you really need to be watching because he's on the cusp of taking that next big step. And I don't know anyone else who represents that more than Darius Lockhart in the Carolinas right now.
Yeah, what a great year! A tour of England. The guy he has put in the time. He is one of the nicest young men you will meet, inside or outside of wrestling. And I was really happy for him.
I tell you, I would, and it's one of those things to where it's on sort of a wrestling bucket list, but I would love to make a similar tour across the UK to see some of those promotions over there and how they do things, because the fans of sport in the United Kingdom period are just really, really intense with how they get into it and whatnot. And I love that. I love the passion that they show. Right. And it just would be a really cool thing to see in person because they've got a lot of really top-notch promotions over there. WWE did not start the UK division for any random reason whatsoever. They knew what they were doing when they started that. So definitely kudos to Darius for going across the pond and taking the time to continue to build his brand.
I'm trying to think. I'm just trying to go through my mind who I want to make sure we talk a little bit about each award. Let's talk about Rising Star of the Year. Yaya's a guy who I did not get a chance to see live this year. He was a guy to me that came out of nowhere. I know, and he's wrestled AML, PWX Pure, NAWA, if I'm not mistaken. He really got himself out there, just debuted at Viral Pro, which I know is outside of our region, but he is a guy who, like Darius in Fire of the Carolinas, Yaya really, he really built himself some momentum, and just he's only a couple of years in.
Mm-hmm. He has the natural charisma about him that people want to watch. And, even if he did not have the physical gifts that he does, because you watch him perform one or two times and you see very much what I'm talking about in terms of his abilities as a ring tactician. But above and beyond that, he has that draw and allure of being just himself in the ring that makes you want to watch him.
Right.
It's a very rare quality. And he's one of the few in this area that could just, ooze charisma, as they could say here. But definitely see him as a hot commodity going forward. And, we, myself and Michael Elliott, we're calling matches for NAWA. We've gotten to see him sort of grow and come out of his shell as part of that promotion there. And just really couldn't say more about him.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those guys I want to see get a South Carolina license and start making his way across the Palmetto State. Yes. Joe, Nate, what are some of your thoughts maybe on Yaya or any of the other nominees or finalists for Rising Star?
I actually got to see Yaya this past Saturday at Viral for the first time. Got to see him in person. I'd seen videos of him and clips, and I got to say, it didn't do justice seeing him in person and just seeing, as Robert mentioned, his interaction with the crowd. It seemed very natural. It didn't seem forced or like you're pandering. He's just seems to be a very likable guy as far as personality goes, and just kind of an it factor. It's just natural, as Enzo would used to say, you can't teach that. It's just one of those things that you either have it or you don't.
Right.
And then plus his in-ring ability, just the way he gets up for his drop kicks and his flips and dives, things like that is just his swanton, just things like that. It's just a guy of his size shouldn't be able to do as easily as he does. So, I remember seeing Bam Bam Bigelow, just being amazed at his agility, and he's got Bam Bam beat easily. So,
Joe, any thoughts on Yaya?
I love Yaya. I believe in Ya. After I saw him at Pure, that was one of the ones that I said I got to see more, and then he was obviously one of my nominations for this award as well. There were a lot of good, very well deserving nominees though, and I think I mentioned a Redbeard. If I could do anything over again, I might nominate a few more people for various categories. Not all of them, but one or two more. But I think we did pick some really great ones.
And Heath, I'll jump back in here to reiterate a point that you made a moment ago. Talent out there, if you're watching this or if you're seeing this, spend the money, get yourself an SC wrestler's license, and come join the fun, because guess what? There are promotions here who will be glad to put you on a card if you're licensed and able to work. Trust me, the number of promotions is growing in this area, and there's money to be made in South Carolina. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and this is just me personally. To me, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse. To me, as a fan, not just a fan of wrestling, but a fan of the CPWAs, as somebody who talks about all this stuff, it is the Carolinas. It's a plural thing in the awards. So if I'm having an opportunity to vote, I'm always going to lean a little more toward somebody that's wrestled in both states. So I encourage, all the young guys, you got to get out there and make it happen. Robert, there's been a lot talked about last year with that award, the Rising Star. I think there were like 14. There were so many finalists, and this year you cut it back. I think you said 3 to 5 years experience was the max. How do you think that obviously affected the sheer numbers, but did that have the desired effect that you wanted in that award, going more to a younger performer?
It did, and that was the real goal of the Rising Star, was to, and this is, I'll give you this good example and this bad example, because we, a couple of years ago, awarded James Drake the Rising Star of the Year category. Well, at that point in time, James Drake had been in the business for in excess of a decade.
Right.
So not to discredit him for his accomplishments, but that was not the intention of what a Rising Star award should have been. And I think we've definitely gotten ourselves on the right track with the Rising Star category now, in refining it to 5 years or less in the business. We are very fortunate in this part of the world to have a cupboard of talent that is constantly being resupplied thanks to the schools and different programs we have in this part of the world. So I don't think it's a category that will ever not have enough talent to really look at for consideration. The one that we are going to have to try and find a way of refining, though, is Fire of the Carolinas, because I don't want it to continue to kind of cross over and intersect with Wrestler of the Year type categories. I want it to be something that is very specific in saying, okay, this is definitely a talent recognition thing that is almost to Wrestler of the Year, but not quite there. So we've got to find a way of wording it, and I hate to use words as the reason for something not getting over, but descriptively, we've got to find a way to make that really a point in 2019. And I think we will.
And see, a couple of years ago, when Drake won Rising Star, had that criteria, had the awards been like they are now, he would have been a runaway for Fire of the Carolinas. I mean, that was really, if you go back to that was really what he was being voted, because it shows now. James Drake, he's been working for so long, these last 3 years, he's come out of nowhere to do some really, really big things and some cool things. Manager of the Year, Tommy Thomas, great talent. He didn't win it last year, had a really good this year. And if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, is Elijah Evans the first PWX heavyweight champion that he had managed? Again, if I'm wrong, I apologize. My memory of PWX only goes back a couple of years.
I think you may be correct. I don't know that he's ever managed one of their heavyweight champions previously. I know that when Anthony Henry had the title, of course, Amber Young is associated with him there. Ethan Case, he's sort of a long gun there as far as that's concerned. Trying to think of who else there. I think you may be right, Heath. I don't think he's ever managed one of their heavyweight champions previously.
And you know, at the beginning of the year, was managing the tag, the tag team champions, and then I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tommy also managed in some other promotions in North Carolina. And again, just Tommy's a heat-seeking missile. So, Nate, Joe, what do you guys think of Tommy Thomas? This is on the record, by the way.
Nate, you want to go or me?
Either one's fine.
Tommy Thomas is doing great things. The Elijah Evans thing this year, he's managed tag team champs before, but I'd like to see him in more promotions, and I'd like to see a lot of these folks in more promotions. Amber, Mikey, all these guys.
Yep.
Bismarck, I think, gave a strong showing for his first year as a manager. I know he got a lot of fan votes, so expect to see him winning this very soon. I would say.
Nate, what are your thoughts?
As far as Tommy Thomas is concerned, I've kind of said it before, but I think just he has such a strong stable there in PWX, just with a syndicate. I think being able to show your worth, show that you're needed, you have a place there. When you're surrounded by such great talent, I've compared it many times to the Four Horsemen. Each of the Horsemen were great wrestlers, great workers, and all great talkers. Did they really need J.J. Dillon? Maybe not, but he still proved his worth by his talking skills and his skills, ringside interfering when necessary. So I think Tommy Thomas does a good job of doing that, by just showing his value and standing out as a manager in a group that might not necessarily need one because they're strong in their own right.
Right. I agree with what Joe said. I would love to see all these managers out in lots of more places. Would love to see Jack Bismarck at more places. Tommy. The sad thing is, and the onus of this is on promoters. Is it takes money to bring these guys in, but to me, having a manager at ringside that always adds a certain flavor to a match, it adds a certain flavor to a card. Especially one like Tommy who can talk and get under a crowd's skin. So I would love to just see more managers. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. More good managers at shows around the Carolinas, and all of the finalists here, and a lot of the people nominated. They're all really really good as far as that goes. Let's talk about Brett Wolverton. What else can be said about Brett Wolverton that hasn't already been said?
I don't know. I think at this point we're almost to a level where this has to become the Brett Wolverton Memorial. What could you say? He is not only a tremendous talent in terms of his ability to make a seemingly simple match have a big fight feel with the way he introduces things, but just also a great individual. There are a couple of people that you can always sort of count on looking forward to seeing at a show in terms of when you go to greet them, they're just going to have, a good attitude and whatnot. He typically is one of them. And, that's not just because he has great chocolate chip cookies for sale at most of his shows, but just the fact that he's a good dude and a great asset to this part of the world in terms of professional wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett, super great guy. His cookies are delicious. I know Joe and Nate, you guys have seen Brett probably mainly at Viral Pro as he's become a staple down there. What are your thoughts on Brett Wolverton?
My wife is over here bothering me right now, saying she wants Brett Wolverton to make her some fudge. I had to ask him before he came to Viral this past weekend if he was going to bring any fudge for her, and he said he doesn't usually do that. So, but yeah, and my wife didn't come to the show.
Oh man, Brett's costing the company some tickets.
Yeah. So, but no, Wolverton. I mean, total professional. That's really all that needs to be said. He always brings in a good element, and his preview videos for PWX and Viral, they're amazing. They're just amazing. Nate?
And I don't know if he does those on. I'm sure he doesn't do those on his own, but that's something I did not even think of in terms of his adding value to the promotions that he works for. They're great videos.
Yeah. Nate, what are your thoughts on Brett Wolverton?
I think he's super talented, just a next level talent, and something that might be often overlooked by some promotions. It's just adds a lot of professionalism to the shows, and I think he definitely does that. One of those things, like Robert kind of hinted at, it might be one of those things where you have to name the award after him to give someone else a chance, because he kind of has it on lock, so to speak. So
yeah. So Brett, obviously a guy that's won that award multiple times. Let's move to somebody who was new this year, and that's Referee of the Year Jared Fritz, who was somebody I nominated. I have seen him at so many different places, and to me, for me, I nominated Jared because of the number of promotions he worked and just his skill in the ring, and also he wasn't just working different. He was in some big time matches, and I was really happy for him. He got some great opportunities WrestleCade weekend. That was well deserved, and this award was well deserved as well, I thought. Joe, what do you think about Jared?
I love Jared. Jared's awesome. Jared and I talk pretty regularly. What you mentioned about him being in big matches, there's a kind of a running joke that if Darius Lockhart has a title match, Jared has to be part of the package to ref it.
Right.
Like his match with Shane Strickland that people are still talking about. Jared was a ref for that. But yeah, Jared definitely has earned this award.
Nate, what about you? What are your thoughts on Jared?
I think he has a lot of legitimacy, kind of like Chris Wiggins, another finalist. As far as like they're there to enforce the rules and lay down the law, and those guys are very good at that. They're good at keeping a straight face, which is kind of a pet peeve of mine when I see a referee in a match and they're getting onto the wrestlers, but they're still kind of cracking a smile, so to speak. So Jared's good at taking keeping a straight face. He's trained. He knows how to take a bump if there's a ref bump involved. He does that well. It's very realistic. It's convincing. So he's a total package. As far as like his size as well, he's shorter than a lot of the talents. It's another kind of pet peeve. It's kind of the old school of me is seeing you see some bigger referees that they're bigger than the talent. Same thing with managers that are as taller, are taller than your talent, and it just makes them not look larger than life like the talent should be, where the focus should be on them. So Jared, like I said, being kind of shorter than a lot of the guys, he has that too as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You were talking about the sort of differences between Jared and like Chris Wiggins and also Ray Boring, who all threw in there as well. To me, the big difference is you look at someone like Jared, and he is a guy who you could almost see in like an MMA ring, in that he has that realistic quality about him. Not that he's not able to emote and whatnot, but by contrast, you look at somebody like Chris Wiggins and also Ray Boring, they have not only that, good officiating quality to them in terms of how they're able to, be involved in the matches, but also from an officiating standpoint, but also in terms of how they're able to sell what's in there, also with their expressions, their countenance, the way they hold themselves, And Wiggins is, to me, one of the top in terms of that whole thing there. And it probably is a continuation of him having been an in-ring performer at one point in time. So he has the training in the background to now bring that to the forefront of his work as an official. So again, kudos to Jared, but he had some tight competition this year. So I think we'll continue to see some great work by all three of these men, and probably some more here in next year as well.
Yeah. So let's talk about before we get to Wrestler of the Year, let's talk about the feud of the year, Malachi Matthews and Ethan Case. This is one I nominated a couple of feuds for this award. Robert, in your mind, before we talk about the actual feud, in your mind, what makes something qualify for what you would consider a feud?
For the longest time, it was a series of matches. But I think in this era of this sort of sports entertainment / professional wrestling, it doesn't necessarily have to be a series of matches. And we've seen that not only become true with what Malachi and Ethan did this year, also last year with what Corey Hollis and John Schuyler did, because they did not have a series of matches. They had what I'll call a series of encounters.
Right.
And the same thing was true with Malachi and Ethan, to where and they did it to a remarkable degree, to where it was not just in Palmetto Championship Wrestling. It was in Palmetto Championship Wrestling. It was in Action Pack Wrestling in Chester. It was in PWX, for example. So just the ability to have that combat span various states, various promotions. Great piece of work by both of those men.
It's been fun for me editing the Palmetto shows this year and going back and just following it, even back to the Palmetto Classic. And Ethan dives out of the ring and accidentally hits Malachi and loses the match. And just to see, like you just said, the encounters, and then to be honest, a lot of times I don't like to see the first match in a feud be like the end all be all, but that street fight between he and Malachi Matthews was so good. It was great to experience that live. One of the hardest things that I'm encountering is getting that live feel to the video. I know Joe, you and Nate have watched part of that feud unfold this year. Nate, what are your thoughts on Malachi Matthews versus Ethan Case?
I was really impressed by the feud, especially with this instant gratification society that we're a part of now, where the payoff is just instant. Okay, here's the story quickly, and here's the payoff match we'll build to the next show,
right,
and then it's over with. I can't tell you what happened, 3 pay-per-views ago with the WWE product, just because nothing has any kind of longevity to it. Nothing really means anything anymore. Everything's quick, month to month, week to week. This was a nice slow build that, that took a few months to get to the payoff. And like you said, it spilled over in other promotions as well. So I think it's a rarity now, especially in the independent wrestling, to see something like that, a feud that had that kind of a build to it.
Yeah. Joe, what about you?
Well, let me put it this way. I think Malachi Matthews sold more free Malachi T-shirts than any of his other gear ever. So that tells you that the fans were on board for the feud.
Right.
Then that occurred during one of the events where he comes and runs in and attacks Ethan. I don't know how many attacks there were on Ethan, and even Superlaw. He attacked Superlaw to
right.
make it even more personal. And it had to have happened 4, 5, 6 times. And of course, Dave Foster suspends him. He can't get his match. Ethan wants him in, wants revenge. The whole thing was played out perfectly and executed perfectly for that one match.
Right.
Series of matches is cool. I like that too. But in this case, this was played out perfectly.
Yeah, and even some stuff Malachi did. Oh, go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Robert.
I think what the point we're all getting at is that this was a very innovative thing, and to see it played out here with some of our local favorites makes it even more special.
Yeah, and even some stuff Malachi did via some other venues and social media just only added to the, and I believe that was the week leading up to the match, only added to the anticipation of that match. Finally, let's talk about Wrestler of the Year, a guy who's been around for a long time, a guy who went away for a while and then came back, reinvented himself, went to the New Japan Dojo in California earlier this year, and really just, as a professional wrestler, character-wise, just stepped it up. And Billy Brash, to me, really deserved Wrestler of the Year. What I found odd as I'm looking back over the awards is all three finalists, of the three finalists for Wrestler of the Year, Darius was the only one that held a heavyweight title in the Carolinas this year, and it was the PCW title, which he held for a couple of hours during the Palmetto Classic. Now, Billy Brash had the AML Prestige title, Chester APW Carolinas title. He had kind of like the secondary title. But again, all three finalists, great Wrestlers. Joe, what are some of your thoughts on Billy Brash, who's a double winner this year?
If you go back and listen to when we first talked to Redbeard here, that was my choice for Wrestler of the Year. So I've been on board with Brash for the whole year. And I know Nate's going to tell you Brash is his favorite wrestler too. But, yeah, he has definitely stepped his game up, definitely earned this. Drake, Darius, you can't really go wrong. But I think Billy Brash really stood out this year. I'll turn it over to Nate.
Like I said, just a real strong top three. All three are three of my favorites. Definitely in my top five. Very well my top three, to be honest. But yeah, just look at where Billy Brash has come from. Even just looking at 1 or 2 years ago, 2 years ago especially, just the transformation he's made, with his weight loss and getting in shape, and he's doing moves now. If you see him on highlight videos that I can't imagine him doing previously. His mic work is excellent, which is it doesn't get displayed nearly enough. This promo work is really good. Promo video setting up, for an event. Some stuff he did with the Monster Squad. They had a manager when they first started, and it was Mikey Colino, and he's moved on to being Coach Mikey with the Ducks, and had much success with that. And so Billy kind of took over that role as being the mouthpiece for the Monster Squad and kind of being the handler, so to speak, for Cutshaw. He just transitioned in that position just super smoothly. So a lot of respect for Billy, and a lot of work he's put in, like you said, with the New Japan Dojo, and just the sky's the limit for this guy, I think.
Yeah. Robert, you've been around the Carolina scene for a long time and have kind of watched the progression and the growth and the evolution of Billy Brash. What are some of your thoughts on this young man?
I'd say you're exactly right there, because I can remember years ago when I first moved down to this part of the world. I'm not originally from the Midlands of South Carolina. I grew up in Lancaster, South Carolina, which is not too far from Charlotte, of course. Saw some great wrestling up there, but whenever I moved down here, we had promotion champions with attitudes. And Billy was, I don't know if he was trained there or what, but he burst onto the scene in that promotion. And it was firefighter Billy Brash at that point in time.
Right.
I'm not sure if he's still involved in that service or not, but I know at one point in time he was a legit fireman. But to see him go from sort of that there to where he is now, it's really remarkable. Because even back then, John Scholar was involved with that promotion as well, because he was a fan, of course, and then grew into being what he is now. But Brash and Schuyler were tag team champions in CWA a long time ago. So again, just seeing where they've come from, seeing where they are now, to continue to see these faces in doing great things, it's just a tremendous pleasure to me to see where these guys are now, because I can remember where they were.
Right.
So it's awesome.
Yeah. Guys, any final thoughts from you guys, or what are any predictions in any of these categories? looking to next year. Nate, let's start with you. What are some predictions for next year?
Honestly, I think I mentioned this to Joe as far as the tag team category goes. If there were a category for up and coming tag team this year, I think the Filth would have been definitely in the running for that. Yeah, I think it's too soon for them this year to have tag team of the year, but give them time and they'll be in that spot. Super impressed with them. A lot of teamwork together in their matches, which I think sets you apart from being a legitimate tag team versus just two guys being stuck together. You can tell they're really putting effort and time into their craft, and so Filth is my pick for next year, at least, if not winners, but definitely being a finalist.
Yeah. Joe, what about you? Any predictions for next year?
I agree with Nate. Like you said, we've talked about Filth a good bit, and because I think they were kind of latecomers this year is the only reason they weren't nominated enough to be a finalist. But next year could be their year. And I mentioned earlier Bismarck. I think next year Bismarck will win Manager of the Year. And I think next year's Rising Star is going to be an insane category, and Fire Carolina is going to be an insane category. I think there'll be some people that were not even nominated or mentioned this year that are going to be on that list.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm going to go out on a limb, guys. This is my prediction for the awards next year. They're going to create some controversy and a lot of conversation. You know, I'm just saying. I know that seems like a crazy thing to say, but that's one of the things that makes it great. Is like if you were doing it and there wasn't debate and there wasn't, strong debate and strong disagreements, it just shows to me at the heart of it, for most people, not all, it shows their passion for wrestling. It shows their passion for their favorites. It shows their passions for their favorite promotions. I think, one of my hopes for next year, just for the CPWAs, is that more wrestlers, more promotions just continue to get more exposure, whether it's, through, I think about some of the interviews that Nate and Joe have done on Suplexes and Mics, and really given some of these folks a platform that they have not had before, and they ran with it. And what I'm trying to do with some of our podcasts, and just trying to get the word out, and and hopefully it just continues to grow. Hopefully people participate. Robert, let me ask you this. I know you did, this was the first year for the fan voting. You also did fan nominations. And again, I'm not privy to behind the scenes or anything. I do remember last year that when the finalists were announced, there was an uproar from some PCW folks. Well, hey, why didn't this guy? And it's like they weren't really aware. And then this year, I think a lot of nominations came in from people that were following PCW. I think it showed, and rightly so, well deserved it. But what do you want to see happen? Before I get into your predictions, what's your vision kind of for that fan involvement, not just for the nominations, but for that fan voting?
I would love to continue to get more input from the fans in terms of what they send in. This is something that I have kind of held to myself, but I'll go ahead and say it now. If you're watching this and you feel like you were maybe left out or glazed over or whatnot, please keep in mind, that we were trying throughout the entire year to get people to send us material. Trust me, I don't have a problem watching more wrestling.
Right.
If you send it to me, I'm going to watch it. And in that same regard, if you think that you've done enough to get noticed and to be a finalist or whatnot, just maybe, for the sake of safety, go ahead and send in that nomination, because it never hurts. You know, and I want to say one of these things as well. As far as, you know, people will feel like they're coy about sending in a nomination or whatnot. Don't be,
Right.
because here again, you might have a diamond in the rough out there, and I fully admit that that is a possibility in one of these, you know, little far off promotions and somewhere in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina. There might be a guy out there who is the next Cedric Alexander or the next JD Drake or whoever. We'd love to find out. I'd love to be able to say, hey, you need to go look at this guy. And, you know, that's been the case here. Like, you know, you were talking about predictions for next year, and talking about, you know, people who've been sort of discovered from the middle of nowhere. One name that I'll bring up immediately in terms of looking at 2019 is Lucky Ali. I think he's a young man he's still got, you know, plenty of green around the gills, but if he continues to listen to the right people, continue to train and get better, he's going to be one of those types that you can't ignore, in my opinion. And I think people are catching on to him. They definitely are, because he's become somewhat of a mainstay at PWX Pure. So there you go. There's one to look out for. You know, there's such opportunity right now in the Carolinas for people to come in to this part of the world. It's so difficult to say, you know, one way or the other who's going to be somebody to look out for. But I would love to see the new presence, the continued presence of the international superstars, Joey Osborne and Blanco Loco. Those are two tremendous performers there as well. I really, you know, we're talking about names that did not get brought up. One that I think will be a big time player in 2019 is Montana Black. Big man, big man. And, you know, in terms of wrestling these days, you don't see men of his size involved with the business that much anymore. But I definitely think he's going to be one to contend with here going forward. But yeah, you know, we talk about depth and we talk about whether or not we're going to have enough talent to go around. I still think we do. I still think the cupboard is pretty full around here. So we're blessed as wrestling fans to be able to watch what we have here in the Carolinas, and I'm glad to be a little part of it in, you know, moderating the CPWAs year after year.
Yeah, I think the next 6-7 weeks in wrestling are going to be nuts nationwide in professional wrestling. I just saw today where you've got NXT talent coming to Evolve. Evolve's coming to Charlotte. You got New Japan coming to Charlotte. Monster Factory just announced they got a big announcement Saturday night. You got the possible Elite promotion starting, and it's very. I mean, there's a good chance some of the folks we're following, even maybe some of these award winners, they're signed by this time next year. And it's like you said, there's a lot of talent, and it'll be interesting to see if that happens and people move on to see who moves up and who just kind of makes the most of that opportunity. Well, I want to thank Nate and Joe for joining us tonight. We are, whether you're listening to the audio of this or watching the video, we are sharing this video with a variety of wrestling podcasts and shows for them to distribute as they wish and discuss. We want this announcement to foster even and more discussion. And make sure, if you haven't already, go on Facebook, go to the Carolinas Professional Wrestling Awards group. It's a growing group. Are we at 2,000 yet? We're getting close, right?
Not quite. We're around 1,300 right now, so we're definitely growing, and we appreciate everybody who came on board as a result of the fan vote. We saw almost 300 new members in about 2 days' time there, so that was a great uptick for us.
Yeah. Well, Redbeard, any closing remarks as we bring this to a close tonight?
Well, I'd just like to continue to say thank you to our panelists that we had this year. You know, Joseph and Nate here were a big part of things, but we also had, you know, Ray Boring, Kimberly Ann there, Zane Riley, Bruce Mitchell, Jamal Talley, everybody who was involved. It was a great crew to work with this year as far as the panel is concerned. Appreciate the fans for your passion. I know that in various instances we haven't all agreed on things and the way this whole thing breaks down, but at the end of the day, I think we're all wrestling fans, and that's the biggest part of this. That's the big point of this, I should say, is that we have things to celebrate. And in this case, we're celebrating independent professional wrestling. So appreciate the fans, appreciate the panel, and appreciate people like you, Heath, for doing things like staying up towards 10 o'clock on a Thursday night when you could be in a nice warm bed somewhere. And instead, you're looking at three of our beautiful faces on this wonderful application you've got here. So.
No, I am happy to do it, and happy to see just what's happening in the independent scene. So thanks to all you guys, and thanks for everybody who's listening or watching this. And let's keep independent wrestling in the region. Let's keep it going strong. So for Robert Truesdale and Joe and Nate from Suplexes and Mics, I'm Heath Mullikin, and we'll see you next time.